Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, the podcast where we bring you inside the world of joint ventures, strategic partnerships, and powerful collaborations. Whether you're looking to expand your network, find new referral partners, or scale your business, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Welcome back to Partnership for Profits. We got another great episode today with another really cool guest. Our guest today is here to tell the truth about selling your business, the truth that most entrepreneurs never hear until it's too late. We have Jessica Fialkovich here, who is a business expert, author, and speaker who has overseen more than $250 million in transactions and helped hundreds of entrepreneurs prepare for and profit from their exits. Jessica, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm glad you're able to join us today. I know you've been on Armando's podcast. This is kind of our affiliated podcast. I don't want to say I'm the B team, but everybody wants to be on Armando's show, but this is the show to be on. So
no, I'm excited. I'm excited. Now I get to do both, right? So
yeah. I'm glad that you're here you're doing both. So Jessica, tell me a little bit about yourself before we get started, and I want to hear about Exit Factor.
Yeah.
So I'll let you have the floor and kind of introduce yourself to everybody.
Yeah. So I'm, I guess I'm what you would call a serial entrepreneur at this point, but I was born and raised in New Jersey and raised to do a corporate career. So I actually come from a very long line of entrepreneurs. My great grandfather was a bootlegger. My great grandfather owned bars. Maybe did two greats there. And then my grandfather owned a chain of pharmacies. And ultimately that chain of pharmacies ended up failing when the CVS and Eckert's revolution kind of came into the Northeast. And so my dad got in his mindset that entrepreneurship's bad. Owning a business is bad. Like it's a roller coaster ride. It's unpredictable. So he went into the most predictable career ever, which is education with a pension and all that stuff. Right. So I was raised to follow in his footsteps and go find a good corporate career, work for a big company, get great benefits, save in my 401k. But that didn't really work out for me. I was unemployable pretty quickly, I realized. Also, the last company I worked for, we were funded by Lehman Brothers in September of 2008. So,
oh wow,
yeah, it wasn't great timing, right? But ultimately, that led me to my first business, which was in the luxury wine space, and we were selling wine. We're kind of like wine brokers, where we had a retail store, but we were selling wine priced between $500 and $25,000 a bottle to collectors all over the world. Super niche, kind of like just fell into that industry, right time, right place. But a few years into it, it got really competitive. We had a retail store. We were working on 3 continents too, and it was just overwhelming. So decided to sell that business. And that's really what exposed me to business sales, mergers and acquisitions, exit planning, where I've spent the bulk of my career. I've had my hands in a few other things, but really I've been in exit planning now for about 15 years, focused on helping specifically small to mid-sized businesses, family-owned businesses like the businesses I came from navigate that path.
Cool. So with that first business that you sold, the wine business, what was the biggest surprise you ran into when you sold it, and how did that surprise kind of help set the stage for everything that you're doing now?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think there was like 3 main lessons that I learned from it. One, I sold for way less than I probably should have. And not because the business was worth more. It wasn't worth more. It's just because I didn't prepare it for sale. Right. I didn't know exit strategy or exit planning was a thing. I just woke up one day and said, I'm done with my business. I'm going to sell it. Right. And so I left a lot of money on the table. The second was the tax implications of selling a business, right? And I find a lot of business owners don't think about that ahead of time. Like, oh, we pay taxes along the way. We pay employment taxes, and we pay capital gains taxes and income taxes. Well, yeah, we got to pay taxes again when we go to sell the company, right? But I think the most unique surprise that people are shocked to hear is that I didn't really have an emotional tie to that business at all. I was young when I sold my first business. I was 28. Like it wasn't a family business. But I really took an emotional hit when I sold that business. And actually the day after I sold that business was a really hard day for me. And both my husband and I went through a really low period for about a year after that. And so I think why that's unique is I think as business owners, we don't think about it as like almost like a grieving process, right? Of going through selling a business, but it kind of is. So for me and for a lot of people too.
So yeah, because I mean, if it's your business, it's kind of like it's your child. So it's kind of like letting that child go, right? So you realize there's not a lot of guidance for owners who are preparing to exit in doing your first sale. Why do you think why is this not talked about more? Why do we not hear more about the exit strategy? Why don't we hear more about that part of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think, well, one, from an entrepreneur's perspective, like a business owner's perspective, I think a lot of us are heads down in our business and we're so focused on urgent fires that are going on in the business. And today and I mean, like as humans, we're bad at this, right? Long-term planning is not one of our skill sets, right?
Correct.
That's
Yeah.
And then the other reason I think it's not talked about is because, and this is why my focus is for small, when I say small to mid-size, like businesses that grow somewhere between like 30 and 50 million in revenue, up to that. But most of the people I work with are like a million, right? A million, million. And I think a lot of time the experts that are talking about exit strategy, they're using all this sophisticated terminology, these vehicles that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. They're just like untouchable for your normal Main Street business owner. And it's not where that business owner lives. And so it feels like, okay, well, that's for the big market. That's for the big companies. There's nothing that I can do owning a retail shop or a distributor or, a small professional services firm.
And so that's what your goal there is to educate the people that are kind of on that end of the spectrum.
Yes. Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. And so when did you guys start? When did you start?
Exit Factor.
Exit
Yeah.
Factor. Yeah.
So it started originally in 2018. I was in mergers and acquisitions previous to that, and I still have a foot in that world with a business called Transworld Business Advisors. But I started in M&A in 2013. But I quickly realized that a lot of the business owners I was representing through these business brokerage and M&A transactions weren't maximizing the value, right? And not just the value, but they weren't getting what they want to emotionally out of the business, right? They felt like they were just fire selling the company, and whoever showed up bought the company, much like I did. And so in 2018, I created a consulting program called Prep to Sell originally. And that business was focused on increasing the profitability, increasing the efficiency, so a business owner could sell their company for more money in 6 to 18 months. And that's what Exit Factor evolved out of. We rebranded in 2021. We extended the program to be working with business owners more in like 3 to 7 years away from that sale. And also not just people who want to sell their business. Like we still have a big bulk of clients that want to sell their business ultimately, but we also have clients that are looking for generational transitions, handing it off to their kids, what's called management buyouts, where the employees take over the company. Even people that are looking at just like hiring a CEO, that's a type of exit too, is like stepping back, still owning the business, but taking an operational exit out of the business. So that's where we're at this point.
Love that. We work with a lot of law firms in our business.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of attorneys that they own their firm.
Yep.
But they are still very much trying cases and working with clients. And a lot of them, some of their biggest struggles are, how do I get out of that seat and just run the firm?
Right.
And some of them don't even want to run the firm anymore. They just want to keep their name on the firm. So what you're talking about is right in line with a lot of the folks that are part of our audience. So this is great. Love to hear that you guys are offering that service. I think I've got a lot of people I could put you in front of for sure. So what separates the businesses that sell for top dollar
Mm-hmm.
from the ones that leave a lot of money on the table?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's two buckets that you look at when you get basically a premium valuation for your company, right? The first bucket is the numbers or the quantitative aspects. So businesses that make more money, and now I'm talking about like earnings, not revenue, right? But the businesses that have higher earnings and a higher earning margin are going to get premium multiples, right? There's also the component, like you want your financial books and records like tied up nice and pretty, like so you can get through things like we call it due diligence. It's basically an inspection period, right? So you've got the quantitative side, right? The qualitative side is about how the business is built. What makes your business better than other people's businesses? And there's some components in it. Like one, you have to have a good team, and team doesn't necessarily mean full-time employees, but people around you that are doing the things like you said. Like you can't be the lawyer that's trying the cases, doing all the paperwork and running the company, right? It's very hard to exit out of a solo practitioner firm, right? but it's very easy if you've built a management team and even layers beyond that of people that are doing the work beyond you. It also helps to have a really good growth strategy, right? Nobody invests in something and hopes it just stays flat, right? So we're always looking for what's the opportunity, like what can the next buyer, the next owner grow this to? And then lastly, I always say, like, there's something about all of the companies that sell for premium multiples that make them better than the rest, and not just better than the rest of their competition, but better than the rest of the other available small businesses that makes them stand out, right? If I'm an investor or I'm looking to buy a new company, I might be looking at HVAC companies, but I also might be looking at roofing. I also might be looking at cleaning. I also might be looking at accounting, right? So oftentimes that better than the rest usually comes down to, like, do you have better margins? Is your recruiting and retention process better than another company's? Do you have a better onboarding process for your customers? Can you attract more clients easily? Something that makes you better than the rest. You don't have to be better at everything, but just like one key component to the business model.
And you want to make that a part of your selling offer, I guess, right? You want to make sure that's front and center. So when do you, again, we work with a lot of small business owners, small to medium-sized business owners. I want to know when, and I imagine this is different for everybody, but when do you know, like, this is the time I need to get out? This is the time for me to get out. This is time for me to move on and try something else. What should are there like flashing warning signs, or not warning signs, but flashing indicators for a business owner? Like, okay, we've reached this point. Now it's time for me to think about, moving on. How do you know when it's time to exit?
Yeah. So we'll go like backwards. So like it's past the time if you're thinking about shutting the business down, right? Like if you're in that mindset, you've already passed the time. Most people, when they decide to exit or sell the business, is when they wake up one day and realize they have no passion, no energy for the business. They've hit a brick wall. Like, actually, the most common reason people exit is burnout, right?
Right.
And so if you've experienced burnout before, it's like it's building, and then you just hit a brick wall and you're like, I'm done, right?
Yep.
And that's where most people exit, right? What you're trying to do is you're trying to catch it like 3 to 5 years in advance. There's a reason behind that. So like when you go to value a company, and this is a buyer, a banker, anybody that's involved in the transaction, they're going to average the last 3 to 5 years of your financials to come up with a valuation. So that 3 to 5 preparation period, we say that because it's directly tied to controlling the financial performance, so you can increase the valuation over time. You can't change the value of your company really in a year. You can move it a little bit, but not significantly.
Right.
And so some subjective things that I've seen, I always say you want to sell a business like before its peak, right? So forget the macroeconomics that's going on in the world. We live in a crazy world, but really when you want to sell your company is right before it hits maturity, when there's still like a little bit more time that you can get out of it, more growth, more opportunity before you have to reinvest and kind of start the process all over again. So what that usually sounds like is, hey, Will, I think I've got a couple more good years left in this business. Like, I'm going to just ride it out for a couple more years and then I'll think about my exit. That's like what it sounds like, right? In your head or when you're talking to advisors, right? And that's probably, if you hear yourself saying that, it's probably time to start planning. The other thing I always tell people is, like, if you're sitting online and like you're really engrossed in the podcast right now and you're reading about exits and you're reading about valuation, like, you're subconsciously already going down the path, right? Like, you're thinking about it. And in my experience, most people's timeline does not extend. It actually contracts, right? The most extreme case I ever worked with was a woman. She had a 10-year exit strategy and we were selling the business in 6 months, right? So usually when you start working on this stuff, it's you get in this mindset and you get into this process, and then you realize you actually have less energy and less passion for the business than you thought you did. And you want to move up that exit.
So she was planning to sell her business for 10 years. And then there was a 6-month window in which to do it. Is that
No, she had a 10-year plan. She was going to sell in 10 years. And then 6 months into that 10-year plan, the business got listed and sold. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And she had a family situation that happened. Like I always say, like, we're also like, we're not just business owners, we're people, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Things happen in our lives that kind of force us to exit sometimes. We don't always get to pick the day or time that we exit, right? So
Yeah, sometimes you just got to do it when you have to do it. So I was reading about you before we came on, and I saw that you say that every business owner should run their company like they will sell it someday, even if they don't plan to. So
yeah.
talk to me about that mindset and why that is so important as a business owner and as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. So it's a great example of the client that moved the time up. So 95% of exits happen for personal reasons, not because there was a business plan put in place. So for example, I mentioned she had a family situation. Her mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. She lived across the country from her mother. Her mother was given a certain timeline to spend with her family and friends.
Mhm.
And she said, you know what? No business is worth this. I need to sell it and go move back to the East Coast and be with my mom. Right. 95% of the time, it's not exactly that, not that bad, but
Right.
those are the types of reasons that we exit our business. I mentioned burnout was number one, illness, family situations, the D's, death, divorce, disability, right? Those are the reasons that business owners exit, not because I have some fancy plan 3 to 5 years. So if we're running our company, maximizing the profitability, maximizing the value, maximizing the ability to transition it, and we end up in one of those situations, now we can exit the business for a higher price point rather than what most business owners do is they're just running their business day to day. And then one of those events happens and now they have to fire sale the company. Right. So
So it sounds like what I'm hearing is if you are, I don't own the business that I work for. I work in the business. But if you are a business owner, it sounds like you should always be thinking about kind of in the back of your mind, the idea of an exit should be something you're prepped for because you never know what's going to happen. Am I hearing you right on that?
yeah. Yeah. And we'll talk about a positive example too, right? So we won't start Monday off with like all this deep depressing stuff, right? But if you're lucky, I wouldn't say all business owners, but a good chunk of business owners at some point in their career will get what I call the stupid offer, right? Which is usually a competitor or a partner of yours or a vendor that wants your company so bad for some specific reason. It's usually like a resource or a technology or a client or something like that. And they make a stupid offer on the business. Like,
When
and
you
when I
say
say
stupid, do you mean like overvalued or undervalued?
stupid overvalued, right?
Okay.
And so we've got a client right now, they're worth maybe a couple $1,000,000, right? And they've got an offer on the table 5 times that, right?
Okay.
And if they hadn't been doing the work, right? And if they hadn't been investing also in themselves and their education to know the difference between this is a normal offer, this is an over market offer, right? They might, and I've seen clients do this, walk away from that offer, right? Or not be able to consummate that deal because their books and records weren't in order and they weren't going to get through the due diligence process or anything like that. So that's a positive example is we should always be running our business like we can exit it, because what if we do have the opportunity for an over market offer or a once in a lifetime opportunity to join, merge with a huge company that could take our
Right.
business to the next level. And if we're not prepared, we're going to miss that opportunity.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah.
So again, I feel like there are a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs who are undereducated about this side of things. How are you letting people know like that this is something like what's the outreach like? How are you guys getting the word out to people about Exit Factor and about, you know, why they need to be thinking about this stuff
Yeah.
5 years maybe before they think they should be thinking about it?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you having me on the podcast because we do a lot of podcast guesting, right? And talking to crowds like this. We also, Exit Factor, we became a franchise back in 2023. So
Okay.
yeah, so we have over 40 different owners in 115 different territory locations throughout the US. A lot of our owners do workshops and educational events in their local markets. So that's one way that you can
Okay.
learn a little bit more. We also, timing's actually really good, but we have a new book coming out that I wrote
Oh,
called
cool.
the Exit Factor. It's being released on September 30th. So quick plug, if you want access to the pre-sale when it comes out, if you go to exitfactorbook.com, you can sign up for the pre-sale list. But that's basically a whole overview of a lot of the stuff we've talked about, like what is the exit strategy like component for your business? When should you prepare? Why should we prepare? And then we take you through our whole methodology of how you can actually boost your valuation and prepare for that event.
Cool. I was just kind of curious because I'm always curious to know how people are kind of marketing themselves and getting the word out. So, because that's a lot of what we do. So that's my neck of the woods. So I'm always curious to know what people are doing to get the word out. So let's shift gears for just a second. And I want to talk about the emotional aspect. We talked a little bit about at the beginning about, you're kind of letting something go that's super close to you, but I imagine it's not just the business. A lot of times it's the people that you're working with. So what are some of the emotional or personal factors that come into play when entrepreneurs are getting ready to go through an exit of their business? And how do you guys help people kind of, is there kind of a therapeutic aspect to what you guys are offering as well? I would imagine that there has to be, right?
Yeah. There is. And so it's a very emotional process. And I don't care if it's the first business that you've sold or bought, or you're doing this hundreds of times. I'm joking. My husband's trying to buy a business right now, and he's being very emotional in the process. And we've done this thousands of times for other clients, and we've probably bought or sold 50 or 60 businesses ourselves, right? It's emotional, right? And it because people are going to be nitpicking your business, the buyers or the lenders or the attorneys. The other thing is, it is like a component, like you said, that you feel like as part of your family, but more importantly, a lot of us have a very hard time separating our identity as a human from the role of what we do as for work, right? And so if you think about this, and I've done, actually my minor was in psychology, so I kind of like to play in this world a little bit now. But if you do some work and you think about, okay, subconsciously, like why am I acting certain ways in negotiations, or why am I delaying on preparing for my exit? Subconsciously, it's because of a fear typically that you have, right? And the fear is usually like, what am I going to do with my life the day after? Right? What does my day-to-day look like? What does my purpose look like if this business isn't here? Right? There's stories of people. There's actually a pretty scary stat that from the Exit Planning Institute that says 75% of business owners profoundly regret selling their business the day after they sell. And it's not about the money, right? It's about like, what do I do now? Even if you're like retired, like what do you do on Monday morning in retirement, right?
Yeah.
And so what we've come up with Exit Factor is what we call the inspiring vision, right? I don't need somebody to plan out their entire life after the sale, especially if they're young. Like they might buy and sell a couple companies in their lifetime, right? But what are they going to do for 6 to 12 months after the sale? And come up with some type of inspirational thing you're going to do, whether that's go out and buy a new business, write a book, go on a road trip, take care of your kids. Like, I don't care what it is, but find something that you're just as excited about as the role that you're going to be leaving.
Well, I guess that makes sense because it's called exit planning, right? So it's more than just the financials. You've got a plan for, what am I going to do when I walk out that door? And I can't walk back in because, it's not mine anymore. So what do I do in that case? So when you guys are working with folks, on their exit planning strategies, is it a one-to-one, or like talk to me a little bit about the process as far as how you guys are working with, or how I don't know if you have multiple folks or it's just you, but how does the work done with these business owners? Are you guys, is it a one-on-one thing, or how does that work?
So we have over 100 certified exit consultants and exit strategists.
That's right. You said it was franchise.
Yep.
I
forgot. So it is typically one-to-one, although our workshops are in a group setting. So if you wanted to start in that area, but how we start is we start with what's called an exit assessment. It looks at the current value of your business, but it also identifies your goals for the future and gives us a full roadmap of how we're going to take you and your business from today to those goals. And then we roll into a one-to-one implementation consulting arrangement. And like I said, it's really important to me to serve small business owners, right? So we have different packages all the way from like a DIY model that's $2,500 a year up to a more highly engaged one-to-one consulting model that's more of a white glove service. So we can serve different sizes of businesses, but also different types of entrepreneurs who somewhat more hand-holding than others.
Cool. I just had a question pop into my mind.
Yeah.
Thinking about seasons to sell, like in real estate, there's buyers markets and there's sellers markets. Does that apply with you selling a business? Is it kind of this, is there a better, like, are there better times in the market to try to sell your business than others? Do factors like that come into play when you are thinking about putting your business up for sale?
So if you're not prepared, yes, there's definitely different factors. Interest rates are usually the biggest dominant factor that's going to increase or decrease your valuation. If you have a good prepared business, which means like you've got your financials in order, we've got the operational stuff taken care of, we've got a good transition plan, right? You've planned in advance. You'll have competition for that business, meaning buyers will compete to buy that business,
Okay.
and negotiate up no matter what time you sell, no matter what economy we're in. There's just very few of those businesses that are available for sale. And there's now hundreds of thousands of business buyers, right, in the US that are looking for, I probably get 5 to 10 emails a day from random people emailing me and be like, hey, Jess, let me know if you have a good cash flowing business they call it owner absentee, which I don't actually think exists, right? But basically the owner's the CEO and they're making more than $500,000 a year in a recurring revenue model that's predictable for the future. I'm like, yeah, if I knew of that business, I would buy it, right?
That's simple enough. That's not a crazy,
know,
like
right?
that's
And
super specific. Wow.
if anyone's listening out there, please don't email me that, right? Be more specific in what you're searching for. But there's literally thousands of people out there like that. So if you have a highly profitable by margin business that can be run with a team and you've prepared for the exit in advance, there will be competition for your business. But if you don't, yeah, you're going to be subject to macroeconomic conditions like interest rates and downturns and things like that.
Okay. I was just kind of curious because, you know, we've thought about, we bought our house in the middle of the pandemic. So we got our house super cheap.
Yeah.
And the house is worth like 3 times what it was when we bought it. And we thought about selling it, but like now it's not supposedly a really good time to sell a house. So we're not going to do that. But I was just kind of curious if that applied with business as well. So that makes perfect sense. Okay. So Jessica, last question here. I want you to think about legacy. And I want you to think about kind of what's the legacy you want to leave behind for the people that work with you, the people that work for you. You know, I know you got a long way to go. Nobody's looking at, or maybe you are looking at exiting. I don't know. I'm sure you plan for it, but
I do have a plan. Yes, I do have a plan in place, right?
But
I'm fortunate to be part of already a multi-generational business. My business partner has a few nephews and sons in the business already, right? So, but yes.
Yeah. So what's the legacy you want to leave behind with Exit Factor?
Yeah. So the real reason that I'm so passionate about this is because only 13% of business owners have a successful exit, which basically means instead of going out of business, they have some type of succession, right? And if you think about that, if we go all the way back to my grandfather's story, right, that doesn't just affect the owner. Like we largely think about, oh, that poor owner, he had to close the business, right? But think about the family, right? So totally changed my dad's mindset, totally changed the trajectory of the wealth of our family had my grandfather been able to exit, right? But then you think about all the employees that work for that business owner, right? All of their families, all the vendors that are tied into that business, all the customers that they serve. And I think that the biggest secret that we don't think about or we don't address in this issue is that when most businesses go out of business, the customers don't go find another local business. They usually go to a big corporate box store, for lack of a better term. And so the local economic impact that city, county, state gets from those sales tax dollars disappears, right? And goes to one of the big four, right?
Goes to CVS, goes to Amazon, goes to
Walmart, right? You know, and so this is a really big issue. And the United States and a lot of countries in the world, I mean, even if you look at like the UK, 99.9% of businesses are small. We've built our economies on the backs of small to mid-sized business owners. But if we don't figure out this succession and this exit piece, the impact is going to be consolidated more and more and more and more to these big corporate companies that control our future. So that's the impact I want to leave. I don't know if I can get it from 13% of successful exits to up to 50% in my lifetime, but even if we could move to 30%, right? Double that. Like think about how many more families, jobs, communities can be saved. So.
I think doubling that impact is a massive goal. And I think you guys are on the right track. It sounds like it. That's an amazing impact to have. You go from 13 to 30%. That's a little more than double, actually.
Yeah,
Doing the math. So awesome stuff. Love this conversation. Love getting to know a little bit more about exit planning and what people need to be thinking about when they go into it. Jessica, thank you so much for coming on today and speaking with me. Let people know how they can find Exit Factor, how they can get in touch with you before we wrap it up here.
Yeah. So if you go to exitfactor.com, you can find any office location nearest to you in our network. And then if you want to find me on LinkedIn or Instagram, that's where I'm most active, at Jessica Fialkovich. And like I mentioned, if you want that pre-sale access to the book, exitfactorbook.com.
Awesome. Love it. Yeah, you guys get your hands on that book. I know a guy who you have talked with before who I know is going to get that book. Armand's a huge reader, so I know he will get his hands on that thing. Jessica, thanks so much for coming on again. Those of you who are watching the live stream out there, we appreciate you guys tuning in live. If you're watching the recorded version of the show, we also appreciate that. And if you're watching on YouTube or listening on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, we do appreciate it. Make sure you follow the show and give us all the stars and the likes and the thumbs and all that good stuff. Helps us a lot with the pod. And we've got more episodes coming later this week of Partnership for Profits. I will be back with some more great guests. Hopefully they can bring as much to the table as Jessica has. And Jessica, again, thank you so much. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and I'm going to talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Partnerships for Profit. We hope you've gained valuable insights on how to form profitable partnerships and take your business to the next level. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Got a partnership story to share or someone you'd like to see featured on the show? Reach out to us. Until next time, keep building those partnerships for profit.